franchise secrets. Erik Von Horn.
Hey, welcome to this episode of Franchise Secrets. I have Justin Sharbutt on, and he is a franchisee of Tide Dry Cleaners and other franchises as well. We really dug into how he expanded so rapidly with one major purchase that allowed him to go from, small operation to a much larger operation. So I think you'll enjoy this episode with Justin. Justin, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So I saw an article on you somewhere in one of these franchise publications. I'm like, I got to get this guy on the podcast. You own 50 plus Tide cleaners, a lot in development, and you own some other brands as well. And so I thought, man, I don't know a whole lot about the dry cleaning business, and but I wanted to get you on here. Somebody that's owns that many brick and mortars that's outside of food would be a very interesting conversation. So take me back to the beginning. Where have you always been an entrepreneur?
I have. Yeah. Ever since I was little, me and my buddies started raking leaves when we were younger, just me and two other buddies, and we called ourselves the Tree Amigos. So we were third and fourth grade. So everything's since then, always been an entrepreneur, and then when I graduated college, actually I had a ski store while I was in college, which was kind of fun. And
where was that? Where did you go to college, and where was that ski store?
I actually went to Texas Tech, and believe it or not, I had a ski store in Lubbock, Texas. And if anybody knows anything about,
I don't even understand. I don't understand how that's possible.
Yeah, especially if anybody's been to Lubbock, Texas, it's so flat. Yeah, you can see your dog run away for 2 days. But there's some ski mountains 3 to 4 hours away, so it's not that bad. And we've got a lot of college kids that love to go skiing, so it was fun. It was fun while I had it.
Nice.
I knew there wasn't a career in it, but it was fun.
So what was your degree in?
Business management.
Okay, business management. Had a ski store, and then what happened after school?
After school, I went and worked for a startup company. They were based out of Australia, but they had an office here. The university here did the research for them, so that's kind of how I found out about them. Worked for them for 2 years, and it was fun. I learned a lot, but I also noticed that it wasn't really taking off, so it was time for me to go figure something out. And my dad was a very successful entrepreneur, and he'd always told me to start looking for a franchise, because he liked the way that franchise models are built. You don't have to sit there and argue about, color of the paint or anything like that. They should already have the playbook there for you. So we were kind of looking back and forth, trying to find something. and I recently found out that Dunkin was going to move into Texas, and so I filed for a multi-store DRA. I don't have any restaurant background. So I was trying to figure out, who was going to help me run it. And at the same time, one of my real good buddies from junior high and high school, he has been in the restaurant business his whole life. And he opened a bar right after college down in South Texas. And he, just recently sold it to his other partner and was moving back home to Lubbock. And he was like, he wanted to get back in the restaurant business. So we sitting around the campfire one night, and I was like, "Hey, man, I filed for some Dunkin' Donuts," and he's like, "Let's do it."
So you guys eventually, was the two of you partner on that, or was your dad involved with that one at all?
Yeah, my dad's involved in that. So yeah, it's just us three. So we opened up our first Dunkin' in 2013, and then.
And how did that one do? And how did it do? And how much of it was due to your friend having restaurant experience? Because that's what so many people wonder about those types of businesses. Would they have approved you without any restaurant or QSR or any type of food experience? Or do you need that? And how helpful was it to have somebody with that type of experience?
Oh, having somebody was huge. Just because, like I said, I didn't have any background. I had a lot of background in the real estate, so I was picking the real estate spots, and he was the operator. But Dunkin', they wanted somebody with a little food background, but they also didn't mind if you hired somebody as a general manager. The owner themselves didn't have to have it as long as you had a plan in place with somebody to run the stores. It's not as a big deal. I've seen some other brands where there's zero food experience, and you can tell some of those stores. But in the same type as me and my partner, we have zero dry cleaning experience, and now we've got 54 of them. So
let's talk about Dunkin' a little bit. Then I want to go back to Tide, because that's where looks like you're building a pretty massive business. And I think you have goals to build it, really, really big. And the reason I want to stick with Dunkin' for a little bit is there's so many people that listen to the podcast that are not fans of any types of food. And they just hear low margins and, employees are a nightmare. And I'm sure there's some truth to that. But from someone with experience with that, what would you say to somebody that says, oh, low margins, difficulty with employees, there's better ways to make money?
I would agree with them on the employees part, but on the low margins, I guess the old adage always says that volume cures all. The more sales you have, the margins are much better. So Dunkin's pretty good at that. They're always tweaking the menu, taking things off that's not selling. So they're always helping that. And I guess coffee has really big margins, so that helps.
Yeah, coffee has big margins.
Yeah. Actually, all drinks right now. So, there is, and like I said, it's margins. I mean, the sales. If you can get sales up there, it cures all.
And so, how important is brand with that? Because Dunkin' has a huge brand name and a big following in different parts of the country. So you had other franchises that didn't have the brand recognition that Dunkin' does, or even Tide. So how important is brand when you look at different franchises these days?
For us, it's all about the brand. That's one of the main reasons we chose Dunkin', was for everybody knew it. Same thing with Tide. Everybody knows that. Everybody has it in their house or has used it at some time. We went with some other brands because of the products that we believed in, but I think the brand's more powerful than anything.
And would you say that is very true in food and maybe not as important in other brands, like maybe service-based or something like that? Or maybe you don't know because you haven't been in some of these other businesses, but are you really speaking about food and how important brand is?
Absolutely. Yeah. In food, the brand is everything. I think one example where the brand may not be as important because it's kind of new and they're growing is, fitness. There's a lot of fitness brands that are good out there that aren't real well known, but there's some really good ones out there.
All right. So let's wrap up the Dunkin' talk. How many do you have now, and are you still growing?
We have 7 right now, and we are not growing any right now. We've had some opportunities to look at some, but we're kind of focused in on the Tide dry finish at the moment.
All right. Let's talk about Tide.
All right.
You have how many? Give us as of now, like where are you? How many do you have open? How many do you have in development?
Yeah, we've got 54 open right now, and we've got 4 in development. And Tide's kind of unique, where you may not be able to see that in food, is that we can go convert other mom and pops. So we can go out and buy one-offs and then convert them into a Tide. So we've got a lot of those that we're looking at right now. So like I said, we got 4 under construction development that we're doing ourselves, but we're looking at converting. Right now, I think it's 12 that we're looking to convert in the next year.
Have you done any conversions up to this point, or will this be your first conversion?
No, we've actually done quite a bit. We've done.
Let's dive deep into that, because I think that's really interesting.
It is. And that's one thing when we got into Tide, we never thought about that. We weren't going to do that. But the whole industry is a little segmented. So like it is, there's always this one, 2, 3, 4 stores that are mom and pops that are, just out there and they're getting a little older. The kids don't want to take it over. So it's kind of prime right now for us to go in and consolidate some of these. We did a really big one down south in Houston and Austin. We bought Men's Warehouse actually had dry cleaners, and we bought those and converted those to Tide, and that was almost 40 stores.
40?
Yeah.
And how, walk us through that deal. Like, walk us through like beginning to end of that deal.
Yeah. At the time, they were the largest, single owned dry cleaner. And we've always kind of been in talks with them. They wanted to be a part of Tide, but we had already owned the rights for Tide in Austin, and we already had one store open. So for them to convert, they either had to sell us their stores or buy us out. And it kind of, we just got to know the guys really well, and we kind of hit it off, just hanging out with them and talking to them, and kind of the industry leaders. They're the ones out there trying new things, and so we just teamed up with them at first, and converted all the stores. And Tide was huge help on that. They put all the resources in that because they knew that would help them grow as a brand, and that's a huge plot on the map for them to have somewhere like Houston and Austin, Texas on the map.
What was the name of the dry cleaner before?
MW, so it stood for Men's Warehouse, like the clothing brand. Yeah.
Okay. And so one of the reasons you were able to do that is you owned the entire markets for
Correct.
those.
Yes. Yeah.
And you had one, and you had a footprint already.
Yeah, we had one store.
They couldn't do anything.
Right. Yeah. So
is that what can you tell us about the deal structure itself?
Yeah. At the time, Tide knew that they needed to grow, and they wanted something big like that, and they wanted a big splash in the industry. I think they had probably, I don't know, probably 40 stores at the time. So this was almost doubled them, overnight. So they gave us a pretty sweet deal on it. Little lower franchise fees on the base business, and then that was full on whatever we grew. But they threw in, tons of marketing dollars to help this thing go the way we planned. Plus, we own 70 vehicles up there, so we told them it's a moving billboard for them. So they threw in some more marketing dollars.
Did you pay cash up front, or did they roll some of the payment into equity that in your company, the Men's Warehouse guys?
They threw it in as an equity, and we got a small loan out for it.
So that's kind of a win for everybody then.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
How long did it take to put that deal together?
The deal took about 6 to 8 months to get the everything done, mostly on Tide APFI's part, the franchisor, because Procter & Gamble's a big brand, so they want to make sure everything was buttoned up. But then, we did the conversions. We would do 3 or 4 stores over the weekend, close down on a Thursday night and be open back up on Monday. So we did that. It took about 6 weeks, but we were doing 3 or 4 stores a weekend. So it was a lot of fun.
What did you think would work during that conversion process that didn't work?
Man, that's a good question. I don't know. There's always something that doesn't work, and there's always hiccups, especially, when you're building a new store, you're using everything Tide exactly once. And when you're doing a mom and pop, they've got, they may have different equipment. They may have, smaller store, or they may do some kind of process a little different. So that was a little hiccup at the first and also convincing people that have been in the business for 30 years that this is the way we're going to do it. And they're like, no, we've been doing it this way. So that was probably the way.
All the employees.
Yeah, the employees.
Absolutely.
Coming in and saying, we're going to do it the Tide way, not y'all's way now. So
did from a employee standpoint, I'm sure they had some key management in place. Did the key managers stay there through, or most of them stay?
We took over of everybody. They almost all stayed. Yeah. It was great.
And then did the former owners just walk away and, one day they were involved and then the next day that they weren't? Or was there some type of agreement for them to be somewhat active for a period of time?
Yeah, let me go back on that. So when we bought it from Men's Warehouse, they exited immediately, but their management team kind of bought in with us and they had ownership. So we kept that's how we kept most of the people on. And so, they were on for a couple of years. We actually just recently bought everybody out, my partner and I. So
what about the leases?
They were on there for a while. I guess that was in 2018. So
40 leases.
Yeah.
That's not easy.
No.
So what kind of lessons did you learn in that process of converting or doing subleases or, some of the nuances of that?
Yeah, that's always the difficult and the not so fun part is, some landlords are really great to work with and some are just miserable to work with. But we learned a lot, and we actually learned how to talk to different people. And it's kind of funny how landlords, kind of the bigger guys are easier to talk to than the mom and pops. The mom and pops depend on so much of it that they take it real serious. It's their baby. So that's one thing we've learned a lot is the bigger companies are a little easier to work with. And especially during COVID, we learned that real fast.
That's true. When we sold, we had 12 solo salon studios that we had in Orange County. We sold that to private equity, and 11 of the 12 leases were pretty smooth. One lease was difficult, and to your point, it was a smaller landlord that was just slow with everything and more difficult. We're like, why are you being more difficult than these bigger guys? But a lot of it, they just don't understand it. They don't care. And that's why it's really important to, as you're signing these leases, to think about what happens when you do sell, because they can hold you to the lease. And it's really important to have your attorney to set it up right in the LOI, have your attorney really work through that to put in language that makes it easier to sell when the time does come to sell it. Because they can hold up a sale. Like one landlord can hold up an entire sale of 40 locations.
Yeah. That's when especially when we're doing a sale or buying out these things, we start on the landlords first. The real estate's, we know that's going to take the longest.
So did all of them, what was the most difficult one? Like, what was it? Was it terms? Was it just them wanting an extension on the lease? Was it them raising prices? Was it them not allowing anything to happen with the personal guarantees or subleases? Or what was difficult?
Most of them, it was the personal guarantees and then they see the big name Tide, but they don't understand that it's still a franchisee owning it. So they want corporate guarantees, which Tide's never going to find those, but our Procter & Gamble's not going to. But so it's hard for some of them to get that part of it. Like you were just saying, we got one that was just real difficult. He still has guys on the guarantee from 20 years ago. He won't release them. So we've had to indemnify. So there's like 4 indemnifications on the original guarantee. So.
Attention, franchisors and franchisees. There are 2 really important resources that I want to share with you that will help you avoid costly mistakes and increase your enterprise value. The first is our free Facebook group. It's a community that has over 4,000 franchisees and franchisors in it. When somebody asks a question, they get honest and authentic answers from multiple perspectives. You can join the group for free over at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. The second resource I want to share with you is if you're a franchisor and you're frustrated that you're not awarding as many franchises as you thought you would, this is the reason I created the Franchisor Mastermind. If you want access to the information, the techniques that the best franchise sales organizations are using to award franchises, and you want what mature brands have with their playbook of having happy, successful franchisees that grow the right way, then you might want to check out the Franchisor Mastermind. The reason why people join is they want access to my Rolodex, my connections. They want the playbook to achieve both short-term and long-term success. They want to increase enterprise value in their brand. Links will be in the show notes or at scalablefranchise.com.
So that's the workaround. Everyone listening, if a landlord won't release you from the personal guarantee, the buyer should indemnify the seller, meaning, and that's language that you want to get from your attorney. And there's a lot of different types of language you can get, but you want indemnification language that, and again, I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice, but this is something from experience that I found to be valuable. So get indemnification language, and that means if they just all of a sudden decide to leave one night, and the landlord will send a letter to everybody on that personal guarantee for deals back because this one didn't let anybody off of it. So they'll all get the nasty letter from the attorneys that represents the landlord and says, hey, you owe us $300,000 because you vacated and you were not supposed to. And then you take that letter and you send something back to the attorney, to the landlord that says, hey, we're indemnified. Your fight is with the current person. You're going to be wasting your money if you continue to come after us because we're indemnified. And then I think the best course of action is to work with, at least this is how it's worked for us, is to work with the buyer that may not have fulfilled their lease obligation. And then eventually what happens is that buyer will work out a deal with the landlord to buy themselves out of the lease. That's kind of how it actually works in the real world. Justin, any thoughts or comments on that?
No, you're exactly right. Yep. They're going to go find their money somehow. They're just going to track down everybody until they get it. So, and then that buyer knows that they'll have to pay, whether it's your legal bills or whatever. So they're incentivized to work with the landlord to get things buttoned up sooner than later. All right. So management of these things, you went from how many locations pre acquisition to how many total after you acquired 40? Let's see. We had 7 stores and then we acquired the 40. So we had 3 in West Texas, 2 in Austin, and then we had some in Colorado Springs at the time. So we were pretty small, we were actually pretty comfortable at the time until this opportunity came. And so then we took advantage of it as soon as we could.
So what did your management structure look like before the acquisition?
Management was, it was me and my partner. We're actually the ones that in the day-to-day. And then we hired a guy to actually run our stores because, like I said, my partner and I had zero dry cleaning experience whatsoever. So we went and hired one of our competitors, one of their right-hand men, and we gave him a little equity in it. And so he's still a small partner today. But he ran all of our stores here in Texas and the ones in Colorado Springs. And then when we acquired MW down in Houston and Austin, their management team stayed on.
So this person that you had originally with the 7 and you gave him a piece of equity, was it real equity, phantom equity, or like just non-voting shares, or what did that look like? If you're able to give that type of info.
Yeah, absolutely. It was vested over a couple of years and it was based on sales and EBITDA. So we set him, we told him that, if you get to this EBITDA, well, we told him you got to get to this sales to get to this EBITDA, obviously. And then that was over 3 years and he exceeded that. So he was still a partner today. Yeah.
Awesome. And does he still have that same percentage of the 40?
Not of the 40. He was of the original 7. We set up 2 different LLCs
because that's a different company. So let's
Correct,
talk about that. How do you have that structured right now? Like from an LLC or an entity standpoint, and then maybe you have a holding company and then some LLCs underneath it. Because Justin, the reason is because so many people, they want to get to where you are, but they make some wrong decisions along the way. And so that's why I kind of want to get into the details of some of this stuff, because people will find it very helpful. So what does the entity structure look like, and why did you set it up that way?
Well, so we've just recently changed the structure a little bit, but so when we started, we just had an LLC that owned the 7 and then was running out of that, and ownership was all right. And then when we bought the ones down south, we set it up as a different LLC. There's different owners, and trying to limit our liability obviously. And now, since we have bought out some of the other partners, and there's a lot of common ownership, there's all kinds of other, Obamacare starts going into effect. Some other taxes start going into effect because it's, I forget what the exact term is, but common ownership in all these companies. So that we do now have a holding company that has these different LLCs in them, that all operate and do their own tax returns. But then the holding company is the one that is going to it's going to the Tide and the franchisors and applying for these applications. I do know a lot of Dunkin owners, they'll set up every store as a different LLC just to limit their liability. But
that's the rub. You limit your liability the more that you have. Each individual store or location or will have its own entity, and that definitely there's seems to be a layer of protection there. Or you group some of them together and there's less protection, but less paperwork and all of that. Yeah. So that's why you want to talk when you're doing some of this stuff, you want to have a CPA and attorney talking about this. Just don't talk to your attorney because they're going to look at it from a liability perspective. Your CPA is going to look at it from a different perspective. That's why you want to have some advisors that you trust. And I see a lot of franchisees that don't have very good attorneys. And they have the jack of all trade attorneys versus someone that's really good at, whatever the need is. And they have weak CPAs. Way too many franchisees and very successful business people have weaker CPAs. So what advice would you have on attorneys and CPAs and as kind of advisors and those that you trust?
Oh, absolutely. We depend on our attorneys for everything. We send everything over to them to read immediately. We talk to them weekly. CPAs, it's more quarterly and kind of talking about different ideas that we have and how we should actually structure these things. I will say we've run into some bigger problems when people have S corps, which is great if it's a family run business and you plan on keeping it forever. But when we go to...
So you talking a true S corp, or you talking an LLC that's a subchapter S?
No, true S corp.
True S corps.
And it's fine when it's been a family business and you run some other things through it, and you'll plan on selling. When you go to buy an S corp, it's much harder for the people selling it to get wrap their heads around it. But we do LLCs for everything under the parent company.
All right. So what can you tell us about any type of revenue or EBITDA numbers that you have now? I'm not asking specifics necessarily, but just to give anything that you typically share in public, just to kind of give people a sense of the business, I think would be helpful. If there's anything that you are comfortable sharing in public.
Yeah. Our goal is 22% EBITDA overall. We've got some stores that are, 30 plus, and then we got some that are below the 22. And with Tide, it's different because they have so many different types of stores. You got drop stores where, just, small footprint, and then you've got, mega plants that are in industrial parks. So it's kind of hard for me to talk about individual stores, but overall our goal is a 22% EBITDA. And that's definitely achievable. Again, sales cures all. So, that's our goal right now.
Let's talk.
And we've been heading it quickly.
What's it like having a franchisor that is Procter & Gamble? I mean, massive, massive company. And you've been a part of some franchises that are smaller, some that are large like Dunkin, but they're not P&G. So give us a sense of working with the corporate offices of maybe an emerging brand to an established brand like Dunkin to a large corporate brand like P&G that has Tide as a franchise.
Yeah, I'll first say that all the people at P&G are awesome to work with. They're very business savvy, very they understand but they are a large corporation. So, say, hey, I want to go try something new. They've got a large legal team. So it may take a while. They may say no multiple times. Our rule is they got to tell us no 3 times before we give up. So we keep going. But also I want to say, like, the version of this franchising is, I call it APFI. It's a different division of Procter & Gamble. So it's an actual small company themselves. I don't know how many employees they actually have, but Tide is, 200 stores compared to a Dunkin that's, 14,000 stores. So it's still great. Like I can call the CEO right now and talk to him quite a bit. My partner and I, we keep going back and forth on the FAC, the Franchise Advisory Councils. One of us is always on it. So we're always keeping our thumb on the pulse of them. But they're great. Like we said, when we were Dunkin', especially out here in West Texas, they don't listen to us as much as, they do at the New York and Chicago brands, where there's Dunkin's on every corner, and they got a big presence, where here, we're miles and miles apart sometimes. And some of our stores are 2 hours apart. So, we don't have as much say, and they're not listening. And we're not going to change their mind anyway, because they've got 14,000 stores, where the smaller brands, and we've even been in the smaller food brands, where they listen, they want to hear what's happening, what we think would work in our markets compared to, some other markets. But I will say, working with Procter & Gamble, I mean, the people that work there, they work for other brands too. So, like Procter & Gamble is really good at moving people around. So they all haven't been at Tide Dry Cleaners forever. They may have been at Old Spice, or they may have been at Pampers before. So it's always interesting, because, some of your favorite employees are there one day and then they're gone the next, and you have to talk to the new guy. So it's interesting, and it's a different dynamic than most, I'd say, franchisors.
What is the dry clean business? So I was in the tax business and the retail tax preparation business. That's how I got my start a while ago. And I realized very quickly that that's a marketing business. I was in the marketing business, and, taxes, that's the thing that we did. And we hired to get that done. But like the better franchisees were, one, really good operators, or really good marketers, or a combination of the two. When you have to boil it down, what is the dry cleaning business? What would you say it is?
It's definitely operations, but it is very local. Like 90% of our customers are within a 3-mile radius of our stores. So it is very, very local. And this is something tough for Procter & Gamble to get, because they love advertising's their bread and butter. And so they wanted to, just put all this, when we're talking, we need to be at the elementary schools. We need to be at the fair, or whatever's going on down the street. Like this is a true local, it's boots on the ground marketing more than it is the national, like a Dunkin', where they can put a commercial up there and that works. Where the Tide, it's got to be local. We got to be passing things out at the grocery store. We got to be at the local events. But it's also,
what do you do? Like, what do you do locally to market? Like, what's your neighborhood marketing, local marketing playbook look like?
Well, before you open a store, we're trying to get everybody signed up, because we have a rewards program. So we're trying to get everybody signed up. And then that's where Procter & Gamble helps, is like we can hand out samples of other products that they have. So we're handing out toothpaste or razors or whatever they're trying to promote too. So that part's easy before you open. But once you open, it's truly just events and trying to get it all in. And dry cleaning is still pretty old school. So mail drops still work for some reason. It's kind of hard to imagine, but also we have the inner circle.
So get a little specific on that. What's the difference between a Valpak, a group mailer versus a postcard?
No, we use Valpak.
Like retail. Valpak.
Yeah, we use Valpak most of the time.
Quantity.
Yeah, quantity. Yeah. Just blanket. And now the U.S. Post Office is so good at targeting neighborhoods, even even demographics that you want now. So that helps a lot. But it all still comes down to operations in the store, because if you mess up somebody's clothes, they're not coming back most of the time.
Tell us more about operations. Like I can just, how many employees are at a typical store? How many customers are coming in and out of that? And like what can break?
So Ty is really good because we know our customers and we know what's working. And not only that, when you check in your clothes, we put a little barcode, scan it, and we know exactly where your clothes are during the process. So we don't lose very many clothes anymore because we know where the clothes is, and we can check. We can even go back to the computer system, go back to our cameras, and see where that clothes or that piece of clothing was last. A typical store, what I call a typical store is, a 3,000, 3,500 square foot plant, but it also has a counter on it. So that we have about 15 to 17 employees there. They're cleaning in the back, and then they're handing out the clothes out the front. Those are the best. Those are the easiest. It's just harder on the real estate to find those. And now everybody wants to drive through. So that makes it even a little more tough. But, so then you got that. And then if you have a drop store, we normally have 1 to 2 people working at a time throughout the week. So, it's only 5 to 7 people throughout the week. Other than that, we also we're trying to do as much automation as we can with a dry cleaner. That's not quite going to be as fast as the restaurant's about to automate. But, we have a kiosk. So it looks like an ATM machine where you could scan your phone or type in your passcode and your clothes will come out 24 hours a day, just like an ATM. We have that. We have lockers in different locations so you can get your clothes 24 hours. So we're always working on trying to find out the best way to automate and working on our employees, make it easier on them.
So from the outside looking in, I think one of the threats to the business would be, an economic downturn, recession, people spending less on, whether it's expensive cookies, whether it's expensive gym memberships, expensive whatever it is. So how big of a threat is the economy to your business?
Pre-COVID, when the economy would go down into recession, dry cleaning would actually tick up. And the reason most people believe is they're taking care of the clothes that they have. They're not going out and buying new. They're taking care of what they have. Mm-hmm. So that actually, pre-COVID, was 100% true. COVID was a big gut shot to the dry cleaning industry and the casualization that everybody's not going to the office or not dressing up, going to the office anymore. That has a big effect on it right now. And luckily, kind of the whole industry, not even just Tide, but the whole industry really started pushing the wash and fold. And that really helped. People were stuck at home for so long. They just tired of doing their own laundry. So they wash and fold kind of exploded for us for a while. And it was a huge uptick. But that's the biggest threat, I think, is casualization right now in the workplace.
So to counter that, it's wash and fold.
Wash and fold.
And what kind of percentage of the business was that pre-COVID, and what percentage of it is it today?
Pre-COVID is about 8%, and it's about almost 30% now.
Hey, just for the listeners, this type of, I'm just inquiring about the business. And as I was doing that, I was thinking, this is similar to what a validation call would be like when you are trying to learn about the industry. It's not just saying, how much money do you make? Tell me how much money you make. Because you heard Justin, some of these stores have high EBITDA margins and some of them have low. Some of them have high volume. Some of them have low. So depending on the franchisee that you get and the day that you talk to that franchisee and the type of store that they have, you might not get a very good sampling of what the business is like. So I'm learning more just about the industry, the threats and different things, plus the timing. What was it like before? What was it like after COVID? And going in with an open mind, because I'm not going to buy a Tide. So I'm just asking just questions to probe that I think are interesting to learn about the industry. So in many ways, this is what a validation call should look like for you learning and wanting to understand, doing due diligence on an industry. So those are some of the threats. Any other And so you said it was 8% before, and what was it after?
It's about 28% right now.
I think that goes into why you want to have a brand be a part of a brand that embraces change and is looking for new ways to generate revenue and eventually drop good EBITDA margin. So how much of that was them pushing that versus the franchisee saying, hey, we need to focus more on wash and fold?
It was definitely both. They knew that, their future looked grim there for a while, and they needed to adapt. But it's also, the Franchise Advisory Council and all the franchisees saying, hey, we've got to be pushing this, we got to be pushing that. And one thing that really helped us during COVID is Tide had they have a charity arm, and it's called I just went blank on it, but it's where they go and clean clothes whenever a hurricane hits or tornadoes and all that. Well, they used part of their funds for us during COVID, and so we washed all first responders. We did wash and fold for all the first responders for free, and Procter & Gamble repaid us on that. So that helped us during COVID, and it was huge for having a big brand like that. It's just unbelievable. I mean, that saved a lot of franchisees for sure.
Dude, that's great. I love to hear stories like that, because you don't always get to hear the things that large franchisors are doing to help franchisees like that. So that's amazing.
Loads of hope is what it's called. Loads of hope.
Well, you do have a lot going on. What's your day-to-day look like? We're going to wrap up here in a minute, but what does a day-to-day look like for you and your partners?
So my partner, he's the operations guy. So he's in the stores talking to the managers and the other field. He's always in the field. He actually still puts himself on the schedule. He loves to be in stores working. He likes to know what's the problem today or figure it out. Mine, I'm more the contracts, real estate, talking to the franchisor, trying to find more stores and also, kind of right now, there for a while when interest rates were so high, we weren't buying or we're not really growing as much. So I've been talking a lot, just trying to find other streams of revenue that we can get out of these stores in unique ways. So my job was real fun when interest rates were low because we were growing fast and fun. And then it just stopped on me. And now it's fun again because I'm just trying to bounce ideas off the walls to everybody, and maybe one will stick here in a minute.
What's the future look like? You doubling down with Tide? You going to diversify? What do the next 5 years look like for you?
We're definitely doubling down on Tide, but we're always keeping our eye open. We're always out there listening, and we always go to all the franchise shows, trying to find the new brands. I don't know if we're going to be in food right now because we're kind of getting out of it. Who knows? We always have these ideas of starting our own, but who knows?
I like it, man. Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Links to everything can be found over at franchisesecrets.com. And if you want my help with anything from starting your own franchise to growing your current franchise business, please visit scalablefranchise.com.